Dr. Joyjit Ghosh is an assistant professor of English at Vidyasagar University. His doctoral thesis dwelt with a study of D.H. Lawrence's letters and their relevance in Lawrence's scholarship. His research interests include the novels and letters of D.H. Lawrence, Indian English poetry, translation studies, Bangla Dalit literature, eco-critical studies, diaspora studies, and animal studies. Several of his essays, research papers, book reviews, poems have also been published in many reputed national and international journals. Recently, he has also written books entitled The Languages of West Bengal, published by Orient Black Swan in 2019, and Imaging D.H. Lawrence, His Mind and Art in Letters in 2012. He is also a member of the D.H. Lawrence Society, UK. And today he is going to speak on I wished he would come back, rereading D.H. Lawrence's Snake. Saying this, I would like to request Dr. Joyjit Ghosh to enlighten us and our participants through his speech. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Shongita, for a very kind introduction. Echo হচ্ছে কি?
No, sir, it's fine.
Okay. So, okay. First of all, I would like to pay my homage to the principal of Midnapore College Autonomous, Dr. Gopal Chandra Bera. My thanks and good wishes, regards, congratulations to the faculty members of the Department of English, Midnapore College, for organizing this wonderful online lecture series. And whoever is present listening to me at this moment, my colleagues in different institutions, my students and scholars, everyone who is present with me at this very moment. First of all,
Sir, sorry to interrupt you. Before you say anything more, I request our participant to keep their audio mute. I request all the participants to keep their audio mute, except the speaker or resource person. So I request you all to do that. Okay, sir. So now.
Okay, I will present the whole thing with the help of a PPT. So let me just open it up first of all. No. Okay.
So it's the information for all of you, those who could not join. Actually, it's 250 now. So Google Meet does not allow beyond 250. So in that case, we will upload it on YouTube, and you can watch it later there.
Okay, Tanmay, can I start now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. This is indeed an opportunity for me to share my own understanding of D.H. Lawrence with my dear students and scholars. Obviously, I would be offering a close reading of the text Snake, which is a very major poem of D.H. Lawrence. Though it belongs to his early career as a poet, it is indeed one of the most representative poems of David Herbert Lawrence. The first thing is, what I plan is to give you an idea of Lawrence as a poet. Before I come down to the discussion on the poem, I would, in a very humble way, attempt to introduce Lawrence as a poet. As you know that in the interwar years, among other great writers, David Herbert Lawrence is a major force. He is a disciple, if you allow me to use the word disciple, of Thomas Hardy, though another icon was George Eliot. But when we start talking about his career as a poet, the first thing that I would like to mention is that he's a major force in modern English literature, and about whom Ezra Pound, that great connoisseur of modern English poetry, yeah, and who also was a kind of icon to T.S. Eliot. Ezra Pound once wrote, I think he learned the proper treatment of modern subjects before I did. This is a very valuable observation on the part of a great American poet, Pound, that he learned the proper treatment of modern subjects before I did. The idea is, that is, the poem that I've chosen for discussion today, the language, obviously I would be talking in some detail. But before I talk in detail about the poem, I would like to share with you my own appreciation of Lawrence, particularly when I take into account the diction of his poems, where Lawrence himself writes in one of his letters that the age is ugly. So we cannot afford to use a sweet, mellifluous diction. The language of poetry should reflect the rocky bareness of the time. This rocky bareness is important. Okay. So this point, obviously, I would again come back. I would just again take up later on. But his stature as a great poetic novelist has had the unfortunate effect that his poetry has been either neglected, patronized, or dismissed. I have quoted a statement from one of the letters of Lawrence. The letter was written to a Croatian friend in 1914. That in England, people have got that loathsome superior knack of refusing to consider me a poet at all. Your prose is good, so good that we are obliged to forgive you your poetry, how I hate them. The language itself is very powerful. Lawrence tells us that he hates those who refuse to consider him a poet at all. And the great Lawrence critic, Gavin Salgado, tells us that this letter was written in as early as 1914. But the point is that by the time only one volume was available, that is Love Poems and Others. But by the end of his life, he had added 9 more volumes, so that we have far less excuse to neglect his poetry than those reviewers and critics who were writing at the outset of Lawrence's career. So it would be, of course, unjust, injudicious if we embrace the opinion of earlier critics who almost tended to dismiss Lawrence as a poet, who almost only took Lawrence into account, Lawrence as a novelist, as a prose writer. So this is, of course, unfair. Then I have tried to map out the career of the poet, and as I have indicated, that he began to write poems in 1905 or so. So he was then a young man, and in my own book on imaging D.H. Lawrence, in a chapter of that book, I had tried to map out this very blossoming of the young artist. So it's a kind of portrait of the artist as a young man. And I have referred to one very important name, great name in this connection, J.C. Chambers, who was the fiancée of Lawrence. in the early phase of his career. And J.C. Chambers, thanks to her that she sent several of Lawrence's letters, early poems, to the English Review. And at that point of time, imagine Maddox Ford, a great man, was the editor of the English Review. So he accepted those poems for publication. And you can imagine that in that volume, in which Lawrence's poems were available, in that volume also one finds the poems of Ezra Pound and great artists like Thomas Hardy. Thereafter, of course, he appeared in many other periodicals, and I must mention in this regard Harriet Monroe's Poetry America. So the observation is this, that few young writers can have been launched so easily. So even this kind of cursory glance at the very career of Lawrence as a poet can help us understand that it's not so easy for one to launch this way. Okay, because you see, a few years after, we find that Snapdragon, again one of his early pieces, but very representative of the poetic genius of Lawrence, it appeared in Georgian poetry. Okay, Edward Marsh's Georgian poetry. And then in 1913, we find the publication of love poems and others. These are the cover pages of some anthologies of poems, particularly the English Review, already I referred to. Georgian poetry, this is one volume, of course. Lawrence's poems appeared in 1315, perhaps I'll check. And then we have also a cover page of some Images Poets, an anthology. So these are key volumes for us. And then I have also these cover pages of some volumes of Lawrence's poems. I start with Amours, then I pass on to Look, We Have Come Through. We have new poems, we have Birds, Beasts and Flowers, we have Pansies, we have Nettles, we have Last Poems, and finally we have D.H. Lawrence's complete poems. These are texts I have in my possession, and I would refer to the introduction given by Professor Pinto, which is available in this edition of Lawrence's poems. Then this is the plan that I have chalked out, that I would like to just map out the career. You see, already I've referred to Georgian poetry. Yes, he was represented both in Georgian poetry, I think 1315, and at the request of Amy Lowell, as you know, was a cult figure in the realm of imagism, as we call it, was seeking support in her quarrel with Ezra Pound in some Images Poets. He continued thereafter to appear in both Georgian and the Images anthologies. But we have to mention this, that Lawrence did neither belong to the Images school nor to the Georgian school either. He was a radical artist, and he chose his own path to treat. So he was neither that way a Georgian nor an Imagist. He was a poet in his own right. Then in 1916, we find the publication of another collection we call Amours. And then we have Look, We Have Come Through, another important anthology of Lawrence's poems. You see that it's an informal record of the day-to-day relationship between a man and his new bride from the early days of his bliss, the times of strife and anxiety till the rich and mutually satisfactory awareness of themselves and each other. There's a poem in this anthology, namely Bay Henef, where you have a blissful picture. But towards the end of the text, you have a couple of lines which reflect the tension. But there's an interesting poem I'd like to share with you. Just reading a few lines from that very anthology, look, we have come through a young wife. The young wife, of course, was that is Frida Weekly. Later on, of course, she became Frida Lawrence. A young wife. The pain of loving you is almost more than I can bear. I walk in fear of you. The darkness starts of where you stand, and the night comes through your eyes, and when you look at me. And never before did I see the shadows that live in the sun. So this is a piece, a representative piece of this volume. Look, we have come through. Why we have come through? Because you see, if you have checked the life of Lawrence, if you have some knowledge of the autobiographical details, obviously you know that is, yes, it was, he was passing through a tension-stricken phase indeed. Because Frida, after all, was the wife of his teacher at Nottingham University. So in order to get the divorce, Lawrence almost had to fight tooth and nail. So that is why the title is so suggestive, so loaded. Look, we have come through. Then we have new poems dedicated to Amy Lowell, was published in 1918, but almost all the poems at antedate those of Look have come through. And another interesting reference I must share with you, that is for the American edition, he added a preface, Poetry of the Present. This Poetry of the Present is very significant for us because it is one of the early manifestos of Lawrence as a poet. And exactly where he refers to Walt Whitman. Walt Whitman was a great influence on Lawrence. Though Lawrence again tried to break free from the influence of Walt Whitman. Students, you know, there is a term anxiety of influence. Lawrence indeed tried to break free from that anxiety of influence. Then his advance as a poet may be seen in the work which began to appear in English, American periodicals of the war, and the tortoise, yes, tortoise. It was published in New York, 1921. And later on, of course, it was included in Lawrence's volume, that is the anthology, Birds, Fish, and Flowers, published 1923. This is very important for us, this very anthology, because our present poems comes from this very anthology, Birds, Fish, and Flowers. Students who have read that very poem of Dylan Thomas, Refusal to Mourn, there is a kind of intertextual reference to this very title of Lawrence's anthology. We note that these are the poems written during Lawrence's travels in Italy, Ceylon, Australia, New Mexico between 1920 and 1923. We know that he was a globetrotter. Even he had a plan to visit China and India, but that dream was never realized. Then I have talked a bit about the anthology, which we call Birds, Fish, and Flowers. From early childhood, long before he became a writer, Lawrence had an apprehension of the world about him that was far keener, more vivid than that of most people. As his creative vision developed, it embodied more and more the artist's sense of the vastness of life, its mystery and wonder, the otherness of various forms of existence, the necessity for human awareness to be in a right relationship with the rest of the life process. This is important. This is important because, you see, this life is vast. And if you appreciate the vastness of life, you have to acknowledge the otherness of various forms of existence. You must remain connected with the entire life process around you. And Birds, Beasts, and Flowers is one of the best anthologies of Lawrence's poems. And I repeat that Snake is from this very anthology. Then we come down to Pansies and Nettles. Uh, the introduction to Pansies is important here. The little bunch of fragments is offered as a bunch of pansies, handful of thoughts, and Lawrence describes that they are my tender administrations to the mental, emotional wounds we suffer from. Mind you that Lawrence here is using the word we, not I, because these wounds, whether mental or emotional, they are the wounds that the modern man suffers from. So this is very significant that way. And we also take note of that thing that where he says that each little piece is a thought, not a bare idea, an opinion, or a didactic statement, but a true thought which comes as much from the heart as the genitals, as much from the head. So this is important. You remember that when you read Eliot's Tradition on the Individual Talent and other essay metaphysical poets, particularly the metaphysical poets, Eliot tries to find out the connection between the modern sensibility and the metaphysical sensibility. And he is of the opinion that look in thy heart and write, that is outdated. Because if you have to find poetry, you have to find it in the cerebral cortex, in the central nervous system. So Lawrence here says that this thought comes as much from the heart and the genitals as much from the head. So this is the point of connection. Okay, the whole man. Okay, that is important. And then, as you know, that I must talk about a bit about Lawrence's last poems. There is a reference to two notebooks. Uh, the idea is that if you read that great book on Lawrence's poems, The Psychic Mariner, okay, Psychic Mariner can help give you that sort of information. Okay, that is, when he was a student at the university, he had his own notebooks, and those notebooks, of course, later on became manuscript. Okay, and critics and scholars try to find the connection between the published poems and the manuscripts which are available in the notebooks at the university. So, but it contained earlier drafts of some of the poems which were mythological, prophetic poems about death. Yes, there are different myths which are handled in the last poems. We have the figures of Dionysus, Odysseus, Aphrodite, and I can just read with you a few lines from Middle of the World, which is from the last poems. The sea will never die, neither will it ever grow old, nor cease to be blue, nor in the dawn cease to lift up its hills. And let the slim black ship of Dionysos come smiling in with grey vines up the mast and dolphins leaping. So this is the magic of the poems included in the last poems. Yes, they were edited by Richard Orlington and O'Reilly. And since then, obviously, Lawrence's poems were published in various anthologies, collections, special editions we have reprints, and Tom Marshall's Psychic Mariner gives us the vivid details. That is Martin Secca, Henneman, Faber and Faber, which of course published Eliot's poems, Penguin Books, Viking Press, etc., etc. Then I have to introduce Snake. The poem was first published in the Dial, 1921, July. Then we have the reprint of the poem in the London Mercury, in Georgian poetry, and as already I've told you, certainly in Birds, Beasts and Flowers, and finally in collected poems. No, finally, because we have now the complete poems edited by Pinto and Warren Roberts. And I would, if you are interested, I would like to uh, recommend this edition to my students, Complete Poems. It's a Penguin Books edition, because the help that you can derive from this edition is a very good introduction, insightful, illuminating by Professor Pinto. Another thing is the notes which are appended at the end of the volume. We come to know from these notes given by Roberts and Pinto that this poem certainly grew out of Lawrence's actual encounter with a snake, which is so drinking from his water trough when he was living at Taormina in 2021. So even the place name is given. When you read the poem, you will find the place name Taormina. But the interesting thing is, time and again, of course, I'd be referring back to the very word encounter. So students, I would like to request you to just keep in mind that I would revisit the word encounter. But at this juncture, I would also like to share with you that is, there is, of course, a curious anticipation of this poem in the essay authored in 1917. The name of the essay is The Reality of Peace. I have quoted a few lines, a few sentences here. I've quoted some other sentences later on. I'll tell you. There's a natural marsh in my belly. The snake is naturally at home. Shall he not crawl into my consciousness? Shall I kill him with sticks the moment he lifts his flattened head on my sight? Shall I kill him or pluck out the eye which sees him? Nonetheless, he will swarm within the marsh. The idea is, if you read these very important sentences, that is, shall he not crawl into? So the idea is that it's like a rhetorical question. The idea is that obviously the snake will crawl into his consciousness. And even if you try to kill it, again it will return. And he will swarm within the marsh, because the marsh is the natural home of the snake. I have given 2 points here. That is, first of all, I have tried to locate Lawrence in the Romantic tradition. This point I have taken from Salgado. The idea is that, yes, he's a romantic poet in his reverence for the natural world. But the idea is that Lawrence cannot be bracketed with Wordsworth, Shelley, and Keats, because he sees the world as far more restlessly active than most of the romantics did. And he extends his sense of the non-human world to include the animal. Animal means bird, fish, insect kingdom, which the romantics virtually neglected. So if you refer to the romantic poets like Burns and of course John Clare, then fine, you'd have a representation of the animal kingdom in English poetry. But you see, the romantics did represent the animals, so whenever they did, or the birds, or whatever, in a different way. They tended to symbolize, idealize the nightingale, which Keats represents in his magnificent ode. It's not the nightingale, but it's a nightingale of Keatsian vision. I've come to learn from the great critic Keith Sager that the opening lines, you remember in To a Scholar, "Hail to the blithe spirit bird thou never wert." Bird thou never wert, this sort of line which obviously made Lawrence enraged, because this is not his way of looking at the insects or the beasts or the birds So the bird is a bird. Okay, a tortoise is a tortoise. So the idea is this is a departure of Lawrence from the romantic tradition of English poetry. Another point that is when you talk about this anthology, Birds, Beasts and Flowers, I told you that the word encounter is very much important. Time and again, I'll be playing with the word encounter. Almost in every poem, you have some sort of encounter between the poet who represents our world, the human world, with the non-human world. For example, you have man and bat. Okay, you have the mosquito. Again, an encounter with a fish. And this constitutes a little drama of the meeting of aliens. Why aliens? Because I don't know you. I know, but again, I don't know. My God is not your God. And with my own intelligence, I cannot measure you. So though he tries to capture, yes, he empathizes, though he tries to capture the spirit of the animal, as the animal is, because he does not sentimentalize, because he does not anthropomorphize, yes, sometimes he fails. He does not fail altogether. But the idea is that the reason is pretty clear, that man is not the measure of creation. So with my understanding, I cannot measure a bat or a fish or a tortoise. I might try, but finally I will fail. And there's no hypocrisy. Now I come down the text. I would like to read with you the poem. And then I would go for a sort of analysis of the text. A snake came to my water trough on a hot, hot day, and I in pyjamas for the heat to drink there. Already I have shared with you that this is based on an actual encounter with the snake and the poet, or the poetic person if you like. A snake came to a water trough on a hot, hot day, and I in the pyjamas for the heat to drink there. It's so hot, that's why the repetitive use of the word hot, hot. And trough, as you know, is a receptacle. It contains food and water for the cattle, yes, for the cows, for the sheep. In the deep, strange, scented shade of the great dark carob tree, I came down the steps with my pitcher, yeah, and must wait, must stand and wait, for there he was at the trough before me, and yeah, in the deep, strange, scented shade of the dark carob tree, great dark carob tree. First of all, you have to notice how Lawrence is able to build up a sort of magical ambience. Strange, deep, strange scented shade cast by the carob tree, a tree that is seen in Mediterranean region, huge of course, and its pods are edible, and it has a kind of aroma. That's why strange scented. I came down the steps with my pitcher. All the purpose is pretty clear. He has come to collect water, but must wait, must stand and wait, for there he was at the trough before me. But he must wait. But there he was, the trough before me. He, the snake, is of course humanized. Lawrence does not use the word it, but he. But this other interesting point, must wait, must stand and wait. You might remember Milton's poem on his sonnet, on his blindness. They also serve who stand and wait. Okay, so there you have a statement of surrender, absolute surrender. But here, yes, he must have patience. He must not disturb the snake because he's a second comer. And later on, of course, I'll be referring to Derrida's appreciation of this poem. He reached down from a fissure in the earth wall in the gloom and trailed his yellow-brown slackness soft belly down over the edge of the stone trough and rested his throat upon the stone bottom, where the water had dripped from the tap. The small clearness he sipped with his straight mouth, softly drank through. His state calms silently. So, a snake, yes, he reached down from a fissure. The word fissure is again significant. And this is obviously crucial, crucially loaded, because if you read some other poems in this anthology, Birds, Beasts and Flowers, there's a poem, Figs. And in that poem, you find that figs represents, the fissure of the figs represents the female part. So it does have a strong sexual connotation in the earth wall, the gloom, and trail this yellow-brown slackness, soft belly down. So this is the liquid movement, the sinuous, majestic movement of the snake, and mark the use of color, yellow-brown, and also mark the poetic license that Lawrence enjoys when he uses the expression soft-bellied. So belly and bellied, it becomes bellied. So verb, over the edge of the stone trough. So as if you can see, the representation is so picturesque. You can see, you can feel the movement of the snake over the edge of the receptacle. The snake then rested his throat upon the stone bottom, and where the water had dripped from the tap, a small clearness, he sipped with his straight mouth. And yes, softly drank his straight calms. Mind you, that time and again, he uses expression, sipped, then of course straight mouth, straight gums. And yes, as if you can see the movement of the water, okay, as it passes through the channels of the body of the snake, and silently. So the idea is that should the narrator, the poetic persona, disturb the silence, perhaps he should. Someone was before me at the water trough, and I, like a second comer, waiting. Already I've referred to the great name Jacques Derrida. Jacques Derrida used the expression after comer. So second comer or after comer, yes, because he was there at the water trough, and because I am the after comer, I am the second comer, to use Lawrence's own word, I must wait. Yes, I must wait. I must stand and wait. He lifted his head from his drinking as cattle do, looked at me vaguely as drinking cattle do, and flickered his two-forked tongue from his lips and mused a moment, and stooped and drank a little more, being earth brown, earth golden from the burning bowels of the earth on the day of Sicilian July with Etna smoking. So the idea is he lifted his head from his drinking. How? He resembles the cattle. The way the cattle drink, the snake also drinks that way. And he was looking at me vaguely, as if there's no direction. And again, as drinking cattle do. So this use of repetition is important in order to contribute to the picture of the snake that drinks water from the trough. Lawrence uses the repetitive expressions and flickered his two-forked tongue from his lips and mused a moment. The tongue is two-forked. and the snake flickered the tongue. And then he mused a moment, as if it's a kind of brooding silence for the snake. He stooped, drank a little more, because the snake was in no hurry. So the snake was at ease. And then again the use of color. And not only color, you see the metaphoric expression also is available for you to pick up. That is burning bowels of the earth. But before that, being earth brown, earth golden. So if you want to describe the color of the snake, it's earth brown, it's earth golden. And it comes from the burning bowels of the earth. Obviously, a loaded expression for us, particularly as it refers to the Etna, the volcano. Okay, Sicilian July, Etna is smoking, and the burning bowels. Yes. So is it only the volcano that he's alluding to? Doesn't it have some other connotation? We would of course explore, but just keep it in mind that it is very significant. And at this point, I feel that I should read the translation. I don't know whether it is available with me right now. Yeah. These few lines I would like to read from Buddhadev Boshu's translation. তারপর নিচু হয়ে পান করলো আরো একটু সে মৃৎ পাটল মৃৎ সোনালী পৃথিবীর জ্বলন্ত জঠর থেকে শিশিরের বিশ্বের এই দিনে দূরে একনা ধুমায়মান. You see how that great poet, how he translates মৃৎ পাটল মৃৎ সোনালী পৃথিবীর জ্বলন্ত জঠর থেকে শিশিরের বিশ্বের এই দিনে দূরে একনা ধুমায়মান. This is the magic of translation. Only a great poet translator like Vidyasagar Ghosh can perhaps do it. The voice of my education, yes, the voice of my education said to me, he must be killed, or in Sicily the black snakes are innocent, the gold are venomous. So when the poetic persona is in a mood of admiration and appreciation, because he is charmed by the magic of the appearance of snake, yes, the voice of the education, he was telling the poetic persona, he must be killed. Why? Because he has his own scientific orientation. The knowledge that he derives from science books is that is in Sicily, the black snakes are innocent, but the gold are poisonous, gold are venomous. And there's some other voices that if you're a man, you take a stick and break him now and finish him off. Yes, that you must not waste a second. You must at once take a stick and do your task, finish him off. But must I confess how I liked him, how glad I was he'd come like a guest in cry to drink at my water trough and depart peaceful, pacified and thankless into the burning bowels of the earth. But must I confess how I liked him? But even when the voice of education is prompting him to pick up a stick and smash the snake, he cannot obliterate that very voice. The voice which is also telling him that, okay, you have liked the snake, so why should you kill it? And how glad I was had come like a guest in quiet. This is important, guest in quiet. Earlier I talked about the silently, here quiet. At this point, I'd be referring to the appreciation of Derrida. It was given in, it was a talk given in February 27, 2002. And I was just referring to this observation of Derrida. That is, here where we talk about this Gistin quiet. Yeah, actually, the poetic person is referring to the code of hospitality. He is the first comer, the snake is the first comer. So I owe him, I ought not to kill him, I ought to respect him. He is my guest. And not only that, Derrida also refers in this regard, that is a classic scene, a classic biblical scene, a classic Middle East scene. It happens near a source of water. The scene of hospitality takes place near a source of water, on an oasis, or near a well. I remember long back I saw a film, a movie that is uh, David, where I have this scene. Okay, David, after walking for days together through the desert, has reached a source of water. And the women are, throwing water and he's now collecting it. So this is, yes, not only classical, it is, yeah, uh, it reminds me of that scene. It is, yes, Middle East, if you like. So, yes. And depart peaceful, pacified, thankless. These three words. Peaceful. So should I disturb the snake? I must not. I shouldn't. So he must depart peaceful, pacified, yes. But why thankless? This word might put us in a kind of trouble. Why thankless? This is my reading that obviously it should be thankless. Why? Because the snake, an agent of nature, a wild agent of nature, doesn't have a sense of what we call human decor, human decency. A snake does not participate in Thanksgiving ceremony. So thankless. And where he would depart? He would depart into the burning bowels of this earth. Again, burning bowels. I would certainly talk about it later on. The idea is this Etna and of course the burning bowels, yes, they're of course integrally connected with each other because the Etna exists outside, but there's also an Etna within your being. Was it cowardice that I dared not kill him? Was it perversity that I longed to talk to him? Was it humility to feel so honored? I feel so honored. So different questions now come up. Was it cowardice that I dared not kill him? So is it an act of cowardice on my part that I'm wasting seconds to smash the snake off? Or is it perversity that I love to talk to him? If you have read Lady Chatterley's Lover, you know that there are some scenes, and there's one scene I remember particularly where there is an open address to the phallus. So is it perversity then? Was it humility to feel so honored? And then the answer comes from within, yes, I felt so honored. So he raises the question and he gives the answer. But again, yet those voices, if you are not afraid, you'd kill him. So that is the idea. If you're not afraid, you'd kill him. So, and this line, of course, is italicized. And truly I was afraid. I was most afraid. But even so honored still more, that he should seek my hospitality from out the dark door of the secret earth. Yes, he acknowledges that when you are stricken by fear, you must acknowledge it. And the poetic persona, yes, does acknowledge, duly acknowledge that yes, he was afraid, most afraid. But, an important but, he was honored still more. So this is what we call polyphony, different voices, that he should seek my hospitality from out the dark door of the secret earth. Again, the hospitality. We have talked about the code of hospitality. And that expression, that magical expression, the dark door of the secret earth. My guest has come from the dark door of the secret earth. I must honor him. He drank enough and lifted his head dreamily as one who has drunken, and flickered his tongue like a forknight on the air, so black, seeming to lick his lips, and looked around like a god, unseeing into the air, and slowly turned his head, and slowly, very slowly, as if thrice a dream, proceeded to draw his slow length curving round and climb again the broken bank of my wall face. He drank enough, so he seems to have finished drinking. Then he lifted his head dreamily, as one who was drunken, and flickered his tongue like a forknight on the air, so black. So again, that reference, that image of flickering a tongue, and it resembles a forknight on the air, so black. So your day is a day of consciousness, but the tongue of the snake obviously is a forked night. And thank God that you have a vision of that dark fork night. Okay, so this very snake represents a kind of a visitation from another world, from the world of the animals, from the realm of those creatures who represent unknown modes of being. Seeming to lick his lips and looked around like a god, answering into the air. Mind you, the very word God with small g, of course, it's not a Christian God that he's talking about, at least at this point. So he's happy. That is why he's licking his lips. And then he's looking around like a god, unseen. Why unseen? Because already I've talked about that he was not looking in a certain direction. To the air, perhaps, yes, and slowly turned his head. So at this point, I must tell you that is, there is a debate among philosophers whether the animal has a face. And particularly the debate started there. It's a kind of age-old debate. But the greatest name, of course, in this regard is Levinas, the great French philosopher, who raised this question: does an animal have a face? And Derrida also addresses this question in his own essay. So, when the snake was, looking like a god, unseeing, but the word unseeing, if we take it in isolation, does it signal that the gaze of the snake is a blank one? Slowly turned his head, slowly, very slowly. So, time and again the word is used. Slowly, slowly, very slowly, as if thrice a dream. Thrice a dream? Is it a profound dream? Is a kind of trance-like state? Proceeded to draw his slow length, again slow length, curving round and climb again the broken bank of my own face. So every, movement, every part of the movement snake is captured by the gaze of the poet. Slowly, curving round, and then it's ready to climb again the broken bank of my wall face. From where it has come, now it's going to depart. And as he put his head into that dreadful hole, and as he slowly drew up, snake easing his shoulders, entered farther, sort of horror, sort of protest against, is withdrawing into that horrid black hole, deliberately going into the blackness, and slowly drawing himself after, overcoming now. His back was turned. So you see, the whole becomes now dreadful. Okay? Dreadful to whom? Dreadful to the man who is now possessed by, obsessed by a puritanical mindset, a puritanical imagination. To that man, to that person, it appears dreadful. Earlier it was dark door, the secret earth, but now it becomes horrid black hole. So this is a kind of paradigm shift. But a snake did not, of course, sense any harm as of yet. So that is why snake easing his shoulders. It's marvelous how Lawrence is able to capture the easygoing movement of the snake. It is characteristic of the snake. That is why snake easing. And then the poet is seized by sort of horror, protest. The snake is withdrawing into the horrid black hole, deliberately going into the blackness, drawing himself after. So the poet or the poetic person cannot simply digest it, as if he is visualizing a sexual act and as if he cannot swallow it up. That's why horror, protest. I looked around. I put down my pitcher. I picked up a clumsy log and threw it at the water trough with a clatter. So you see, then the hasty movement, the ugly movement. So I put down my pitcher, picked up a clumsy log, mark this one, clumsy log. The log itself cannot be clumsy. So transferred epithet. The act is clumsy, the act is ugly, and threw it at the water trough with a clatter. Clatter again is important, onomatopoeic. As if it echoes a harsh sound as you throw the log in the direction of the snake in order to harm it, in order to smash it off. I think it did not hit him, but suddenly that part of him that was left behind conversed in an undignified haste. Again, a pregnant expression is undignified haste. This haste is unbecoming of the snake. The snake has its own majestic movement captured by the poet in the earlier lines, but now it becomes undignified. Because the snake sends the alarm, the danger. That's why convulsed in an undignified haste, writhed like lightning and was gone. Gone where? The black hole, the earth-lit fissure in the wall front at which the intense, still noon, I stared with fascination. So you see, the still noon swallows up the snake, and it, of course, leaves the poet or the poetic persona in a sad state, where he simply regrets his own ugly and clumsy act. And immediately regretted it. I thought how paltry, how vulgar, what a mean act. So three phrases, adjective phrases: paltry and vulgar, mean. I despise myself and the voices of my accursed human education. Again, a very vital expression. Accursed human education. So, what has education taught me? To only kill the venomous snakes and, of course, ignore the black ones. What has education taught me? To only glorify the sovereignty of man on the face of the earth and ignore the other creatures. What has education taught me? To simply run the race as a human being and ignore others. But you have to acknowledge the diversity of the biodiversity. You have to acknowledge that you are a part of this ecosystem. You cannot sever yourself off from this system, from this order. So I thought of the albatross. I wished you'd come back, my snake. As you know, this is a precise intertextual reference to Ulrich's The Rime of the Ancient Mariner. And this is a line that I've quoted for the title of my presentation today. I wished you'd come back, my snake. My snake. Okay. So the snake to which he threw the log in order to harm it, kill it, Now he says, my snake, I wished you to come back. For it seemed to me again like a king in exile, uncrowned in the underworld, now due to be crowned again. So, seemed to me like a king, but king in exile. Students, you have completed your history of literature. You remember the restoration scene. Charles I was beheaded. Charles II escaped in France. And when the restoration took place, he came back to England. So as if the snake resembles Charles II, uncrowned in the underworld, but yes, uncrowned in the underworld, now due to be crowned again. So we have to give the snake its due dignity, because it's now uncrowned underworld. Underworld again is important. I will talk about it, because yes, it would help us understand the poem when we read the poem from a perspective which is psychoanalytical. And so I miss my chance with the lords of life and have something to expiate wickedness. So I miss my chance. I got a chance, but yes, I've missed it. And this is the moral with which the poem ends up, that is, I have to expiate something. Expiation, again, is a religious word. I have to expiate. What expiate? Expiate what? Pettiness. So this is a poem, and at this point, I mean, before I proceed further, I would like to just read a section from one of the letters of Lawrence, where we find that, yes, he describes one of his encounters with a snake. I saw a most beautiful brindled adder in the spring, coiled up asleep in her head on her shoulder. She lifted her head like a queen to look, then turned and moved slowly and with delicate pride into the bushes. She often comes into my mind again, and I think I see her asleep in the sun, like a princess of the fairy world. It's queer, the intimation of other worlds which one catches. So the chance is, that is, the intimation of other worlds. But you have missed your chance, and you have to expiate your sin. That is, the sin of committing a petty act, a vulgar act. Now I would go for the analysis. Yeah, you have throughout the poem I. Who is this I? The I, the nexus of two voices, one persuading him that the snake is a king in exile and due to be crowned again. On the other hand, you have another I who, of course, supports human education, even though it is accursed. And the experience of reading the poem is an experience of fluctuation between the two opposite poles. Its language is a corresponding alternation, or even at times interpenetration of two different styles. This is important. The poet on purpose uses two different styles. On the one hand, you have, evocative, repetitive, incantatory rhetoric. On the other hand, you have abrupt staccato style. But it's two styles, of course, interpenetrate each other and contribute to the organic unity of the text. Coleridge's organic unity. The snake is a triumph of style and idiom. This is observation of Professor Pinto, one of the very few English poems in free verse where perception is embodied in rhythms that are an essential part of the poem's meaning. This is important. Where the perception is embodied in rhythms that are an essential part of the poem's meaning. If you don't understand, if you don't appreciate the rhythm, you cannot appreciate the meaning of it. They're integrally connected with each other. And then I've quoted from Graham Half. That is, if you're sensitive to the rhythms of English speech, you cannot fail to observe the lovely fluidity of movement. Okay, I remember that is Stopford Brooke says that when you read to a skylark by Shelley, You listen to the flapping of the wings of the scarlet bird. And if you read the poem Snake, uh, of course, with your own careful way, and if you have that kind of sensitivity to the rhythms of English speech, I believe you can listen to the movement of course, see, feel, and will listen perhaps the movement of the snake. And we have alternation of regular iambic line for a line or two, and we have also conversational run. We have a kind of oscillation between the apprehension of a strange Orphic life and the prosaic voices of accursed human education. And at this point, I'll be referring to some sentences from Lawrence, where Lawrence says that, okay, I cannot tell you what pattern I see in any poetry, say one concrete thing. It's a hidden emotional pattern that makes not the obvious form. So Lawrence was opposed to the obvious form. Obvious form was mechanical to him. Obvious form was a skin and grip thing to him. He was in search of a hidden emotional pattern. Obviously, Snake is a dialectical poem, working through contrasting styles, to which already I've referred to. And these contrasting styles reflect the antithetical attitudes to life. But obviously, there is a common ground rather than the clashing opposites, which seems most significant. You remember that is Coleridge, while he was attempting to define a poem, he was trying to use idea on the use of rhyme. He says, nothing can permanently please which does not contain in itself the reason why it is so and not otherwise. If meter is superadded, all other parts must be made consonant with it. Lawrence, of course, was a genius. So he knew how to justify the use of iambic lines, the conversational run, everything, the mixing of styles. But it's not simply a mechanical mixture. It's an organic sort of mixing up. Yes, and the thing is, is again taken from Salgado. That is, though we have, the I, and I is derided for its pettiness, but we cannot say the I is, simply destabilized, or the I should be displaced. No, rather, the snake is summoned, yes, not to displace the I, but to be recognized as an essential, if neglected, element in the potentially fuller life of the I. So you don't cancel out your I, but you acknowledge the snake within. There is that essay, The Reality of Peace, where he writes that, come then, lie down delicately in the sun of my mind, sleep on the bosom of my understanding. I shall know your living weight and be gratified. For the Lord is the Lord of all things, not of some only. Why not of some only? Not only of the mankind, humankind. And everything shall in its proportion bring its own draught of life. Okay, the snake has its own right. The man, the crow, the bat, everyone on the earth. It's interesting to note, how the images, of course, are significant. First of all, you have read the poem. There is cattle. Then, of course, guest in quiet. Then, of course, a cosmological reference. Okay, and then finally, yes, God, the laws of life. So this is, you see how the poet's appreciation grows. Appreciation regarding the stature of the snake, the significance of snake. There is an important statement which one finds in Lawrence's essay Rickman. The Christians face by face set out actually to annihilate the essential being in man. The Christian myth, the snake is accursed, exiled to the underworld. But for Lawrence, yes, it is, of course, a deep, deep life. And you cannot deny your deep life. So you see, the idea is that is why God with small g, because we were not valorizing the Christian God. And yes, the idea is you have referred to albatross. Yes, the mariner was punished. He was not given water everywhere, not a drop to drink. There was punishment. And you see, in that section, you find that he was only seeing the slimy things with legs that crawled upon the slimy sea. This sort of picture is also available in Eliot's Love Song of Alfred Prufrock. But then he was brought to accept that everything in nature has its own appointed place. The blue sky belongs to the native country, their own natural homes. And then he says, oh, happy living creatures. So in the moonlight, the beauty of the snakes dawns upon him, and he blesses them unaware. And of course, that thing, the carcass, of course, then was dropped from his neck. So we have a moral, certainly we have a moral in Ancient Mariner, he prayeth well, who loveth well both man and bird and beast. Snake also has a moral, but it is a different worldview. Yes. What does a snake represent then? It represents a tremendous, wonderful, non-human quality of life. It represents the unknown modes of being. Why unknown? I told you, that is, the god of fish is not your god. And man is not the measure of creation. That's why unknown. Of course, you try to capture the unknown modes of being. And you are, of course, successful to a certain extent. And we have used the expression and clarified the snake is in his shoulders, which conveys unusual perception, uncanny understanding of the behavior of snakes. So you see difference and otherness. These are two very important words, otherness and difference, in the appreciation of the animal in Lawrence's poems. But yes, as already indicated, you can certainly apply your own psychoanalytical understanding. Yes, Lawrence's own work, Fantasy of the Unconscious. Sex is our deepest part of consciousness. It is utterly non-ideal, non-mental. It is pure blood consciousness. It is a consciousness of the night. The soul is almost asleep. And there's a pity that with our own human education, we try to repress it. But yes, to use a Freudian expression, the return of the repressed, yes, the repressed will return. And it will unsettle you. And it might, if you don't take care, it might cause a sort of neurosis. So yes, you have to learn reverence for the sex. You have to strike a fine balance with the body and the mind. So I have two quotes before I conclude. That is one from Sex versus Loveliness. Now, sex and beauty are one thing, like flame and fire. If you hate sex, you hate beauty. If you love living beauty, you have a reverence for sex. Sex and beauty are inseparable, like life and consciousness. And the intelligence which goes with sex and beauty and arises out of sex and beauty is intuition. So you cannot sever one from the other. There is a beautiful scene in the last novel, Chatterley novel, Chatterley's Lover, where we find that you see the first when Connie first saw the man Milord's bathing, she was shocked. Okay, the shock in the room. So at that time, she was not in a position to appreciate the vital organism because she didn't have the intuition. She tended to sever sex from loveliness. But if you want to have a reverence for sex, you have to accept the loveliness. And if you want to appreciate the loveliness, you must have reverence for the sex. So this is the thing. And also I have quoted from the prose of the Chatterley novel, life is only bearable when the mind and the body are in harmony, and there is a natural balance between them, and each has a natural respect for them. So why should you disturb the harmony? Body and the mind, they have natural respect for each other. So why should you disturb? My remarks, that is, yes, So that is why the title of my presentation, the poet wishes that the snake should come back, take its appointed place, its own place of glory. Lawrence once wrote that all I want to answer to my blood direct, without fibbling intervention of mind or moral. Very interestingly, mind and moral become synonymous. So that is, if you encourage Puritanism, then obviously your gaze becomes ugly, your gaze becomes obscene. So yes, the poem in its own ways does awareness of the need for reintegration of snake element into larger humanity. And in the pandemic situation, this is my own reading, the nature is reclaiming her own space and nature's naturals are coming back. Yes, the idea is when birds, beasts, and flowers are claiming the sovereignty everywhere, whether it is town or village, yes, a snake can be read in a different light. This is the translation I talked about, Deshantar Kobita, where we have the translation of Snake by Buddhadev Bushu. Then, thank you very much. This is the brief list of references.
Thank you so much, sir, for this wonderful academic discourse. It has been a pleasure to listen to you. So now it's time for taking questions, and those who are interested, they can ask sir directly or write them down in the comment section.
Good morning, sir. Am I audible?
Good morning.
Sir, am I audible?
Yeah, perfectly.
Yeah. Sir, would you like to comment on the analogy between Lawrence's poems and Ted Hughes's poems, the animal poems, especially because of the alternate god that is suggested and also the sexual imageries that we get in both the poems? And
You see, Ted Hughes was a direct disciple of H. Lawrence. Okay. So obviously, the influence of Lawrence was very, strong, marked on Ted Hughes. But what I find in Lawrence particularly, that is, in Lawrence, the sex metaphors, the sex images are far more dominant than in the realm of Ted Hughes' poetry. Okay, you have, that kind of gaze with which you appreciate the animal in its entirety. You are not othering the animal. This is available in Lawrence, this is available in Ted Hughes as well. But that the note of strong sexuality is often dominant in Lawrence, but that's not happening with Ted Hughes. Okay.
thank you, sir.
I have one question.
Okay.
Can I ask, sir?
Yes,
Yeah.
before that, I request all the participants, if you, when you are putting questions, so before that, you please introduce yourself.
This is hello everyone. This is Devobroto Adhikari, Assistant Professor, Hooghly Women's College, West Bengal. First of all, sir, I think this is a wonderful presentation, a wonderful lecture to
Thank you very much.
hear. And also a big thanks to Midnapore College for organizing such a wonderful lecture series. My question to you would be, do you think that the poem Snake somewhere talks about the formation of a modern subject? Forming of a modern subject who is always in a strange dilemma, who is always suffering from an anxiety, who is always undecided about his activities, about his decisions, and always uncertain of his existence, and always searching for a fixity, always searching for a center, always searching for a steadiness somewhere, as is being reflected in Prof by Eliot.
Do I dare?
Yeah. Always, he's somewhere trying to find himself by doing something which is outside, and trying for a center, trying for possible a fixity which is whose lack he is suffering from, and a strange sort of undecidedness about what to do, what decision to take and what not to do. I mean, do you think that sort of
thank you very much for your reflection. The idea is that, as you know, when we try to make a sort of distinction between modernism and postmodernism, modernism, of course, always encourages a quest for the center. Even when you read Eliot's Wasteland, and that very phrase, heap of broken images, even then is a kind of search for the center. Yes, I agree with you. But postmodernism, of course, does not attach any importance to center because there's no center. Okay, in the realm of the postmodernist discourse. Now, when you talk about fixity or center or whatever, particularly with reference to Lawrence's snake, the idea is that in Lawrence's vision, it is the phallic consciousness which is constituting the center. So if you ignore, if you repress, then you are at danger. And there is a possibility that you might also suffer from that state which you call a split personality. Okay. So Prufrock is unheroic. And in Snake, at one point of time, the poet narrator tells himself that, are you afraid? And again, yes, I was afraid.
Yeah.
But there is a tension again because he also loves the color, the movement of the snake. So yes, this sort of indecisiveness is of course there at the heart of the narrator, of the poetic person. But if you talk about center, yes, the phallic consciousness is a center, okay, which can help us in, of course, in Lawrence's vision, help us overcome this sort of disorder, neurosis, whatever. Thank you.
Hello, sir. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah.
Hello. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, you're audible.
Okay, sir. This is Vicky Prasad from Jadavpur University, sir.
Can you increase the volume a bit?
Okay.
Or should I increase my volume?
Yes, sir. Am I audible clearly, sir?
Yeah, now you're audible.
Yeah, sir. This is Vicky Prasad from Jadavpur University, sir. Okay, I'm
Okay.
an MPhil scholar. Yeah.
Okay.
Sir, thank you very much for your enriching lecture, sir. It's very insightful.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and thanks to the Department of English, Midnapore. And thank you, Tanmay, sir, also. My question is, sir, here I asked, let me just see the. Yeah. Sir, do you think, sir, the snake was conscious of the poet's presence? And if yes, how does it throw light on the dichotomy of absence and presence from Derridian perspective?
I have not referred to Derrida from that angle, of course. I only talked about the code of hospitality, which is available in Derrida's essay. But the question that you have raised is quite interesting. The question is that, was the snake aware? I cannot say yes, I cannot say no. Why? Because you see, throughout the poem, there are some lines, some phrases which are very revealing. For example, right now I remember the very word unseen. If you concentrate on this very word unseen, then can you say that yes, the snake was aware or the snake was not aware? So what does it reveal? Unseen. The plain reading of the poem might reveal that, okay, the snake became absolutely conscious of the presence of the poetic persona when he picked up the log and, of course, threw it in its direction. But before that, the very word unseen is a very, very important word, which I believe is at the center of the discourse. I also talked about whether the animal has the gaze, has the face. It is almost unresolvable. But that unseen word is very important for us. I believe I have been able to answer your question.
Yes, of course. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you.
So it's a question from Enamul Kabir Pasa, Assistant Professor, Sipat Singh College. So should I read that question?
Okay, please.
Yeah. So can we take the snake as an element of other than human world, which shows the ecological consciousness of Lawrence?
Yeah, I have just briefly touched upon it, and time and again I refer to ancient mariner that he prayeth well who loveth well. Whom you love, both bird and man and beast, and everyone. The idea is that snake certainly is a text to which you can apply your own reading, ecological, whatever. But yes, I also remember that is, uh, as you know, that the different commandments, 10 commandments, and the commandment number 6 is thou shalt not kill. Okay, so when Derrida is reading this poem, this great poem of Lawrence, he's telling us that okay, thou shalt not kill is also a kind of message of the poem. So you have to acknowledge the biodiversity. You have to honor the ecosystem. You're a part of the system. You cannot appreciate yourself in isolation. If you do that, you'll be doing that at your own danger, at your own risk. So certainly, yes, I believe that, yes, snake or bat or mosquito, they're all our fellow creatures. We have to acknowledge their existence, their presence. Otherwise, you know, we should be inviting a world which should be, you know, dangerous. It should be risky for everyone. Yeah.
Uh, Hello, sir.
Hello.
Uh, Thank you for your enthralling presentation and wonderful space that we have and your reflections. Am I audible clearly?
Yeah, you're audible.
Yeah, thanks. It's Arko Chakraborty from Midnapore. I have specifically two questions for you and quite observations these are, which I'd like to ask now. Why do you consider the approach of the speaker in this poem delineating intense subjective emotions and partly intellectual emotions and the turmoils on whether to consider the snake as a positive threat? And you are considering this as organic. Why exactly can this be specified as organic? This is my first question. And the second is, from the eco-critical point of view, how far do you think that Lawrence champions the nature as the most complicated portrayal of the very internal essence of a human being, rather his own self?
The second question, of course, I would again ask you to repeat. But before that, the first question is that is why I'm calling it organic. Okay.
Yep.
I have, while I try to analyze the poem, I have said this that okay, in the poem we have two contrasting styles. One style which depends upon a rhetoric which is incantatory, repetitive, and of course, which helps us appreciate the charm of the snake. On the other hand, a style which is a staccato style and which uses short lines. There's a kind of rupture as if, and even also the use of onomatopoeic expressions like clatter, etc., etc. But when you read the poem as a whole, the idea is these two styles, which are apparently contradictory, they don't cancel out each other. Rather, they complement each other. They contribute to the organic structure of the poem. When you read Coleridge's that great work, Bad Literaria, where he defines the poem, time and again, that is the thing to which he adheres much importance, organic unity. So these two styles, they complement, they're interdependent. So finally, when you finish reading the poem, you find that you are in the right place and you have been able to understand the message or moral, whatever the poem offers. Okay, clear?
Yes, sir. It's clear. So it's
That's it.
clearly denoting the reciprocal combination of the seer and the thing seen.
The two styles, they denote two different attitudes.
Yes.
Okay, but finally
Yes.
they don't cancel out each other, they complement.
Yes.
Okay, and what is the second question?
And the second question was from the eco-critical point of view, how far do you think Lawrence champions the nature as the most complicated portrayal of the very internal essence of a human being?
Okay, you just pick up that phrase again, burning bowels of the earth. Fine.
Okay, fine.
This burning bowels of the earth, on the face of it, it is a reference to the volcano that is alive. Okay, it's smoking. Fine.
Yep.
But the volcano does not simply exist outside. The volcano is also within.
Yes.
So this binary between the external world and the inner world is erased at a crucial point in the poem Snake. Because you feel that you also burn within. Okay.
Yep.
So if one simply disowns it, then obviously through the channels of dream, it will return and it will unsettle one.
Yes.
That is a point.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Again, sir, it's a question from Parul Shoni. She has asked, Lawrence makes his reference to what education has taught. So, is it a kind of anticipation of the postmodern world, where the education is providing us with a sense of violence, either subjective or objective?
Okay. Whether modern or postmodern or neo-modern or paleo-modern, whatever, there is always a debate between Apollo and Dionysus. Okay. Apollo is the apotheosis of reason. And Dionysus is, of course, representing the vital forces, the life forces. So there's always a tug of war between these two at the core of your being. So whether modern or postmodern, that's not important here. What is important is, that is, if you are able to resolve the debate between the two, then you are at peace, otherwise not. So whether you are belonging to the 20th or 21st or whatever, that's not the idea. The idea is an eternal combat between Apollo and Dionysus. Got it?
Last question, sir, we will take. This is the last questions from Raksha Anda 9. Sir, when Lawrence has uttered the word, what has education taught me? Can we relate this notion of not harming animal to S.T. Coleridge's imagery of albatross in Rime of the Ancient Mariner?
What is the question again? Please, would you repeat?
Yes, sir. Lawrence has uttered the word, what has education taught me? Can we relate this notion of not harming animal to S.T. Coleridge's imagery of an albatross?
Okay. Already I have referred to that commandment, do not kill. Okay. This is the sixth, this is occupying the sixth order in the list of 10 commandments. But Levinas placed it in the first. Okay. Whether you read Rime of the Ancient Mariner or whether you read Snake, the message at one point of time, at one level, is the same, do not kill. So, when we use this language, okay, which is a language from the world of law, attempt to murder, the poet or the poetic persona did exactly that. Did exactly do that. He attempted to murder one of the agents of nature. The albatross did not do any harm. Rather, the albatross was a harbinger of happy tidings. Okay, the albatross was, of course, representing everything that was positive. Okay, the albatross was their friend, their companion, and it partook of the human portions. But the mariner shot it dead. What is the reason? We don't know. Is it a willful act? We don't know. In the case of Lawrence's snake, as he is guided by the knowledge that in Sicily the black snakes are innocent, but the golden ones are venomous. So though he's attracted by the color, by the movement of the snake, he thinks he must not waste a second, lest the snake might harm him. The snake is not in a position to harm, but he's afraid. He was most afraid. So he picks up a log and throws it in the direction of the snake, attempted to smash him. He was not successful, but it was an attempt to kill, to murder. For that, of course, he felt sorry that it was a paltry act, a shabby act, a meanful act. So, do not kill is a message. But in addition, when you read snake, we find that if you ignore your snake, if you ignore this agent of nature, obviously it symbolizes the dark vital force, then obviously you are inviting dangers. You might be suffering from a split situation. So that is the thing.
With this, now I request Professor Sangeeta Kona. For our introduction, she is an assistant professor of our department.
Okay.
Department of Village Midnapore College. So I request Sangeeta Di to continue the session.
I would like to ask Shushmita Chatterjee to please do the vote of thanks on behalf of Midnapore College. Shushmita Chatterjee, are you there?
Yes, ma'am. Hello.
Yes.
I'm audible.
Yes, you're audible.
Yes. A very good morning to one and all present here. I, Shushmita Chatterjee, student of Midnapore Autonomous College, would like to express my gratitude towards Dr. Joyjit Ghosh for delivering such wonderful lecture and for enlightening us towards the relation of the creative and informative notion. Secondly, I would give special thanks to the strongest pillar of our institution, our respected principal sir, Dr. Gopal Chandra Bera. Cordial thanks to Sangeeta ma'am and Tanmoy sir for all their efforts and cooperation. Thirdly, I am grateful to the participants for making this event successful. Thank you all and stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
Sangeeta. Thank you, sir, for giving us this precious time and entertaining each and every question. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, sir. We hereby end the session.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Yeah.